What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 191 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about Welcome to Hoxford. This is a 4-issue miniseries written and drawn by Ben Templesmith, and this is a werewolf prison story. I don't know if I've ever seen or heard of another werewolf prison story, but basically the gist of this is you have a group of really vile, ugly, morally reprehensible, disgusting people on death row, and they are sent to this private prison where the warden tells them, you are not going to be rehabilitated, you are not ever going back into the real world, but we hope that we can make your stay here in your final years of life at least a little bit more comfortable than it would have been at the previous prison that you were at. And then we find out by the end of issue 1 that the warden and all of the staff here at this facility, they are all werewolves, and basically they are using these prisoners who are being brought to this facility as food. And it is a very interesting, very brilliant story. I actually read this once several years ago and really did not like it. I just didn't like it. It was very disgusting. It just rubbed me the wrong way, and it is still very disgusting. There's a lot of ew to this book, but that's definitely by design. And reading it this time, I liked it a lot more than I did the first time. And I'm not really sure what it is that changed for me in the years since I read it the first time, but it's very interesting to me how Ben Templesmith is able to refit the werewolf mythos for the modern day. He talked a little bit in the foreword of this book about how werewolves were always not very scary to him, and they were just the poor cousin to vampires. And you look at vampire stories, and they've never really been out of vogue. At least since the Dracula movie came out back in the 30s, vampire stories have always been pretty popular, and you just see them all over the place, even up until today. You have TV shows, movies, novels, all sorts of vampire stories, and lots of people since Bram Stoker have tinkered with the vampire mythos and tried to find ways to make it work in the present day. You haven't really seen a lot of that with werewolves. Mostly, you see people doing werewolf stories set in the past where it's just some dude, and we just get to see a couple of transformations before he dies, or maybe he passes on the werewolf curse to somebody else, or maybe you'll have something like in Buffy the Vampire Slayer where there's a werewolf that's part of the main cast, but since it's part of an ensemble cast and you only have a werewolf once or twice every month, then you don't really have to play with the werewolf story that much in the series. You can do stories with Oz the werewolf when he's not being a werewolf. But this story actually plays around with the idea of these characters who are werewolves, and what are they going to do with this lot in life that they have been burdened with. Are they going to try and lock themselves up and prevent themselves from killing and eating everyone that they see when they become werewolves, kind of like Oz does in Buffy? Or are they going to use this curse that's been put on them and try and make the most of it? And that's what these guys do. And it's kind of genius that these guys would say, we're going to put together this private prison, and we're going to ask the governor to send us the worst of the worst out of all these other prisons that are overflowing with prisoners, and we're just going to eat them. And nobody's going to be the wiser because we have this contract with the governor where nobody is allowed to come and visit these prisoners. And then we do get a kind of point of view character who comes in, and she keeps demanding from the warden that she get to see one of her patients who she had been treating before he was brought here, and then she's the one that we kind of get to see this whole story play out for. But this is just a very interesting story. It's really cool getting to see Ben Templesmith, like I said, take the werewolf story and apply it to the present day. How would you live life as a werewolf in the present day? I really like that a lot. I think that Ben Templesmith definitely succeeded in making werewolves a little bit more terrifying than what they were before. I don't necessarily agree with his statement that they were never scary. I think that werewolves potentially can be scary, just like vampires and any other monster can be, but Ben Templesmith definitely does not fail to deliver here. They are very scary here. I really like this story. Now, I will go ahead and say, if you are easily offended, if you don't like gross things, do not read this book. The writing is very gross. The art at times is very gross. He does not try to shy away from all the gross and the stuff that's going to make you want to cover your eyes, especially the prisoners who are brought to this facility. They are all very disgusting people. They have all committed some very vile crimes. If you don't like that kind of thing, if that kind of thing bothers you, please don't read this book. And I think that's part of what bothered me the first time I read it many years ago, and then going into it this time, I guess I was a little bit more conscious of what I was going to be getting myself into when I read it this time, and so I was allowing myself to enjoy it more when I read it a second time. But if that kind of thing does bother you, then like I said, you may want to stay away from this book. But overall, I really enjoyed this reconstruction of the werewolf genre for the present day. I thought it was very interesting, and maybe you guys will as well. So those were my thoughts on Welcome to Hoxford. I hope that you guys liked this review, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow with another video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.